Hi everyone, this is Ulysses Velasquez, and I'll be doing preparation to questions 11 and 12, and we'll be talking about Wallace and I think it's Wegener. Um, Alfred Russel Wallace was mentioned earlier in question 10 because him and Charles Darwin were coming up with the ideas and the foundation of the theory of evolution. And it was interesting in the reading that I had mentioned that he became um, kind of like the parentheses. There's Charles Darwin and then Wallace as part of the theory of evolution. But he also had some significant things to bring to science and evolution, and that was biogeography, which was a study of how species are dispersed across the planet. Um, I had read that he had noted dispersal of species and how natural boundaries like rivers could mark the end of an area where a species lived. And we learned about this in Bio 181 in ecology, how sometimes things like rivers um, or lakes or certain barriers, natural barriers like mountain ranges, can cause there to be a difference in species because of those natural boundaries. Or there's even some species that can only exist inside that fine boundary. And so this was actually something that led into the work of Wegener, who in 1915 had noted that there were similar fossils, but in very different areas of the world. And so if I screen share with you here and we go to the world map, he had noticed that similar fossils could be found on one side of a body of water of for example, the Atlantic Ocean, and on another. And maybe it's not here; it could be here, probably in Africa. But how could there be these fossils here that were almost exactly the same as fossils here if they're separated by a body of water? And little did he know that there was a thing called, um, plate tectonics and continental shift and movement. And so this would later lead to the foundation of this principle that these parts of the world were once connected like puzzle pieces, and through separation, there was a diversity of species that could occur. And I think that that's just amazing. It's amazing how some of these people had these ideas, and then that they would later be proven through things like plate tectonics. They just had no idea um, or evidence yet that these things existed. Um, and so these are some of the big ideas that we gained from Wallace and Wegener. One, that species could be created through natural boundaries that formed. And two, um, because of these shifts in the continents, new species were able to be derived from that, and that they could have been the same species when those places were together. Finally, there's Thomas Hunt Morgan, and his work was with genetics, and I thought that this was amazing. So what he did was, now we're further ahead in the future, we understand that things have a genetic code, as he worked with fruit flies, and he wanted to induce in the fruit flies a genetic mutation. So he used things like X-rays on these fruit flies to cause their DNA to mutate. And lo and behold, it worked. And he was able to create a fruit fly with a genetic mutation for white eyes. So you take this new fruit fly with white eyes, he breeds it with ones with red eyes, and the F1 generation have all red eyes. Okay, well that makes sense if we remember the Gregor Mendel's pea plants that the first generation had were all the same. So then the F2 generation had, lo and behold, the magical 3-to-1 ratio, and Morgan's fruit flies had white eyes. And so this contribution helps helped to push this idea that there could be mutations even within the same species, and it doesn't necessarily have to be considered evolution. But even within this small amount of time, you could see a change in the phenotypes of a species. And who knows if this change could lead to some advantage in the future, which would lead to a possible change in the species to favor this new phenotype. And so we can see that within the DNA that we already have lies dormant the possibility of evolution. It's just a sleeping um, process that could be awoken at any moment through genetic mutation. Later in 1953, the work would be related to the genetic discovery of DNA, which I think is just an amazing concept. And so these are our three people we were talking about: Wallace, Wegener, and Morgans, and their influences on evolution. And thank you for your time.